Hello, good to be with you again. As Peter just continues to remind us of how to walk in this world and how to do it well. He comes now upon the issue of the authorities that are in our lives, the government authorities. Now, I'm just going to confess to you, we were here late at the church the other night, and we were praying late into the night, and on the way home, I was on one of those roads, and there weren't other cars around, and the speed limit was 35, and I was exceeding that. And I had a police officer pull me over, and I just thought, he's right, and I'm submitted to authority. So he walks up to the side of the car, and I tried to address him in a humble way, and to let him know it wasn't my desire to do the wrong thing. I was just really distracted. I ended up getting off with just a warning, and I'm glad that it hasn't happened too often. But in all of that, it was just a good reminder to me that the scriptures want us to know that a man who won't submit himself to the authorities in his life should not pretend and believe that he's actually submitted to God, the ultimate authority. I want to avoid any rebellion that's in my life because I want no rebellion against God. When I'm going through a fiery trial, as Peter is addressing that issue, and as he's addressing the believers in the New Testament church, sometimes the persecution and the trouble came from those who were in authority. And he says to continue to honor them. So in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 13 and 14, he says, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. He's reminding us here that when we're walking in this world, that we need to be in submission to kings and to governors. Now, when you think back to the founding of our nation, there was a point at which they came to the understanding that those who were in authority had violated their God-given rights. There is a time when we have to say we have to obey God rather than men. Peter and John did that when they were arrested and told not to speak about Jesus anymore, and they said we ought to obey God rather than men. We see government sometimes get out of control, but a believer should be very careful. At the local level, whether it's a police officer pulling us over, whether it is at the larger state level of a governor or even a president or a king, we ought to approach them in every circumstance of just saying, God, my first desire is to be in submission to those who are in authority in my life, and that you commanded me in the word to do it as unto the Lord. In other words, when I submit to them, I'm submitting to your lordship. The people that are over us have been given that place in this world by the allowance of God. Whether it's abused or not, I have to understand that God allowed it. I want to walk carefully before the Lord. During this season right now, when churches have been required to follow certain ordinances or whatever it might be, I'm continually praying and saying, God, give me wisdom. I want to be in submission to authority, but I also don't want to allow authority to overstep its guidelines or its rights concerning my worship of the Lord. So God, I just pray right now during this very critical season, help us to be men and women who honor and respect police officers, local governments, national governments. Help us walk into respect and honor, and let us do it as unto you, and give us the wisdom to know, Lord God, if that's ever violated in our lives. It's an important prayer right now. It's important